Those who had arrested Jesus took him to Caiaphas the high priest, in whose house the scribes and the elders had gathered. But Peter was following him at a distance, as far as the courtyard of the high priest, and going inside, he sat with the guards in order to see how this would end. Now the high priests and the whole council were looking for false testimony against Jesus, so that they might put him to death. But they found none, though many false witnesses came forward. At last, 2 came forward and said, "This fellow said, 'I am able to destroy the temple of God and to build it in 3 days.'" The high priest stood up and said, "Have you no answer? What is it that they testify against you?" But Jesus was silent. Then the high priest said to him, "I put you under oath before the living God. Tell us, if you are the Messiah, the Son of God." Jesus said to him, "You have said so, but I tell you, from now on you will see the Son of Man seated at the right hand of power and coming on the clouds of heaven." Then the high priest tore his clothes and said, "He has blasphemed. Why do we still need witnesses? You have now heard his blasphemy. What is your verdict?" They answered, "He deserves death." Then they spat in his face and struck him, and some slapped him, saying, "Prophesy to us, you Messiah. Who is it that struck you?"
Hello everyone and welcome to St Mark's Online for this Good Friday service. My name is Ben Hewitt with Fiona, one of the ministers here, and I'll be sharing some reflections on these passages that we're reading today. Well, this isn't how we plan to do our Easter services this year. Another plan changed and a long list of changes for all of us. And with those changes we're experiencing because of this pandemic come some big questions you might be asking too. Am I going to be okay? Am I going to have a job at the end of all this? What is our society going to look like? What's our economy going to look like? Will my mum and dad be okay? Will my grandparents? Big questions. For this service, we'll have just one question at front and center the whole way through. The question is, who is Jesus? Now, I wouldn't be surprised if that's not a question that's keeping you awake at night. It might seem like a bit of a luxury with all those more immediate concerns, but I'm hoping you'll make time for that question, at least today, because it is one really worth asking now more than ever. Why? Because the Jesus we meet here in Matthew's Gospel claims miraculous power over sickness. That is strange, when every one of us feels complete powerlessness in the face of this COVID-19 outbreak. He claims to be the fulfillment of promises made about him over a period of hundreds of years. That's strange. My world's been turned upside down in just the last 3 or 4 weeks, never mind keeping track for hundreds of years. And Jesus here, he doesn't flinch when staring down the barrel at his own death. That too is strange when this viral outbreak has given each of us a strong dose of our own mortality. Why can he be so assured? Who is Jesus? I hope you'll see it's a question worth asking this Good Friday. We meet Jesus here in Matthew chapter 26. He's been arrested. He's long been a thorn in the side of the religious establishment. They resent his popularity and miraculous power and his powerful teaching, and so now they're intent on having him killed. Jesus knows the stakes are high, but the shock of this sham trial is just how little he says. He's silent. Finally, he's pushed by the high priest under oath. "Are you the Messiah, the Son of God?" your words, not mine, says Jesus. And then he says the longest thing that he will say through his entire trial and execution. Who is Jesus? Well, this is Jesus in his own words. But I tell you, from now on you will see the Son of Man seated at the right hand of power and coming on the clouds of heaven. Each part of this statement is a big claim. He's reaching back into the Old Testament. From now on, says Jesus, in other words, in the future, you will see the Son of Man. That's his favorite title for himself. It's the idea that he is absolutely human, but more. He's pointing back to the Old Testament, to the book of Daniel, where Daniel has a vision of one like a Son of Man, receiving from God dominion and kingship that is everlasting. And that fits with Jesus' next statement here, that he's seated at the right hand of power. He calls God simply power. The life giver for all creation, the boss of everything that is and ever has been. And Jesus sits as his right hand man. And he'll come again on the clouds of heaven. Back to that vision from Daniel, it's a promise of Jesus returning with all power in the universe to make all things right and to put right every injustice that he suffers and that anyone has suffered, when he judges the world with complete knowledge and perfect fairness. Who is Jesus? This is Jesus in his own words. What do you think of it? You might hear this and scoff, and we'll see plenty of that in the rest of this story. You might be offended by his claims, just like the high priest is. You might be convinced that he is who he says he is, and willing to live your life in the service of this king. The one thing we cannot be is blasé. Jesus must be utterly out of his mind, or so full of his own ego that he's repulsive, or he is who he says he is. Whichever way we decide, we have to do something with Jesus. So, who is Jesus for you? In the text just below this video, closing out this chapter, we've given you some suggestions for how you might spend some time thinking through that question for yourselves, perhaps on your own, or perhaps together with the people you're watching with. Take some time to do that now. Who is Jesus for you?